In the audited financial statements there, it really, governmental auditing standards require you to kind of speak to the big items, I guess, so to speak. So what it considers to be the big items are your major governmental funds. The major governmental funds for you guys are general fund, street fund, parks and rec, capital projects, and Hamilton. Basically, that is a numerical calculation of the size of those funds, how much activity. If they are 10% of your total revenues, expenditures, assets, liabilities of the governmental funds, or 5% of your total government-wide, they're considered to be a major fund, and so those are your major funds. The non-major funds you can see are your other 1912 Art Fund, the Moscow School Fields, and those type of things. And then enterprise funds are your business funds, water, sewer, and garbage. So the general fund is really the probably the most scrutinized fund, as it's your operating fund. Basically, it's the fund that catches everything that isn't required to be captured somewhere else, and it's your biggest fund, and it's the chief operating fund of the city. Special revenue funds, basically they're everything that is required to be, the proceeds are basically received for a specific revenue or a specific expenditure purpose, and they're legally restricted to be spent for that purpose. And here's some of your special revenue funds. Here is your governmental operating. This is your general fund, your streets, and your parks and rec. These are kind of your general operating major funds. Here's just kind of a representation of the fund balance over time. You can see your general fund, generally it kind of ebbs and flows as you guys go through major projects and those type of things. But you can see the streets, they've all really kind of kept pretty normalized over the last 5 years. Parks and Rec has grown a fair amount due to the Moscow school fields and those type of programs that have been implemented. But and this is the fund balance as well. So as you plan for future projects, especially in the Parks and Rec street funds, those fund balances will rise and then flow out as you expend them. Basically, what is your general government expenditures? I'm going to show you a chart here basically comparing your general government to other areas, but your general government is just your legislative, your executive, your administrative, finance, legal, kind of what it takes to operate the city from the inside. And then you have public safety, which is your police administration, your dispatch, fire control and prevention, those type of services. And so you can see here the general fund revenue over time kind of has flowed with the increase of that. And basically your revenues for your general fund are primarily property taxes. There's some highway user fees go into those type of things. And then you can see here kind of how that is absorbed. The general government generally tends to rise. Actually, this year your expenditures in the general government went down slightly this year. Public safety actually rose to where you were almost a break-even general fund this year. I think it was like a $9,000 net increase. So basically, you spent what you made this year, and so that's what that is a representation of. Another one of your big areas is your cultures and recreation, your parks, your swimming pool, the HERC. 1912 and Art Fund, and here's kind of a representation of how those have been spent over the year. Year 2013, you see that one looks kind of like an aberration. That's the school fields. Basically, that's when those were constructed. So that's the amount of Hamilton monies that went to the school fields there. You can see. The street fund, another one of yours you can see here. Kind of a representation of how much expenditures are funded by revenues, and then the revenue line to the top, revenue plus transfer in, is basically what other funds are contributing into the street fund, and that includes water, sewer, garbage, those other government funds. In the enterprise world, this is really your water, sewer, garbage. This is your business type activities. Basically, if it's charged a user fee, it falls under the enterprise funds. It has a different accounting treatment than kind of the budgetary style that I was talking about. It does run more on a business style basis. And so we'll go through kind of each of those individual funds kind of just as a representation. You see, you got your regular expenditures and then your capital outlay. Those are your capital projects. You can see in the last couple of years, your water fund has undergone some very large capital projects. And so you can see over the last couple of years, your fund balance probably in the water fund has dwindled a little bit as you've saved for 13, 14, 15 for these major projects. And now we're seeing those go out.
That's well number 10 in the booster station
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah. And so you can see here as the net position, which includes those capital assets, you can see that as you have spent more and purchased more, your net position has increased kind of as those projects have gone into service. And then you can see that the net position for the capital projects has actually gone down as you've spent those monies. Sewer, really the capital expenditures have been minimal in the sewer fund. You have been accumulating, getting ready for some sewer projects, and we'll see that here in a second. But you can see your expenditures and your revenue have been pretty steady in the sewer fund. Not a lot of change there. And you can see obviously you're building up in 16 and 17 for from some future sewer capital projects. That's where your net position is increasing. Sanitation, obviously it's been pretty steady as well, and it's a pretty healthy fund. You can see that the revenues have continued to keep up with expenditures, which is a good trend to have in the government world. So, and you can see that the sanitation fund has continued to increase the net position, kind of set aside for those future capital projects as those may occur. So with that being said, I didn't delve into too many of the individual numbers. Obviously, that's probably not for this meeting. But is there any questions for me or?
We may have some for some of the, because it was, this is pretty intense.
Yeah.
It's about 140 pages
Yeah.
of information I poured over the weekend, and I pretty well understand it. But questions from council to Nick.
I had a question.
Okay, Catherine.
It's on packet page 230, but it had to do with the transit center, and I just wrote why variance. Again, this was a huge document, so I'm not even sure if my notes.
I do not. Do you have a copy?
I mean,
of that?
230. I'm almost there. Hold on.
Yeah.
230. Hold on. And I just, again, just trying to understand the.
And is that I don't actually have the packet, but
I
is
can
it
talk about that.
Yeah.
the
Okay.
expense
Good.
versus
I found it.
budget?
Yeah, it's on page 230, Transit Center. Schedule of revenues, expenditures, and changes. And it just says variance favorable, unfavorable. I just wanted to understand what was going on.
Variance was because when the transit center was being billed to the University of Idaho in a certain fashion, we went back, rebuilt that because parts of it we weren't able to substantiate. So it took us some time to do that, and I believe all of fiscal 16 went by without collecting fees. So those were billed and made up, I believe, in January.
And when you say substantiate, what do you mean in accounting terms?
Well, you'd have to ask the accountants.
So when he says you can't substantiate, what do you mean?
And, well, in regards to what he's talking about, when she's asking about the contract. So when the university and the city of Moscow were looking at the contract, there were some discrepancies that they couldn't determine what the issue was. And so Gary was working with Dan on a contract that everyone could agree on that made sense, that we had the numbers for. So that when he's saying substantiate, he's just meaning the numbers that we can provide to prove what the contract needs to be.
The wording on that is a little bit kind of confusing in a way, because what you got is for under charges for service, you got a budget of 32,000 and then an actual 16,362, and then you got a credit, which would be a credit of 15,638, but it says unfavorable. Well, it's really a
Right.
credit.
Well-
And so the terms that we use are just a little bit tweaked.
Yeah, that 15,000 is actually the variance. It's just showing how much of the budget wasn't
Spent.
Used.
correct, and that has to do
Right.
with the contract not being finalized until after the fiscal year. So this next year, you'll see the transit center catch up, and actually, it will be the other way. Next year, when you're looking at the budget to actual, it's going to be over because we will receive funds that are not budgeted for fiscal year 18.
Okay.
And those will be for previous years.
Thank you for answering that.
And some of the terms are just a little bit, they're different than regular accounting terms if you're in a business or doing a home budget or whatever. It's just different lingo, so.
Thanks for that. Thank you. That was my only question.
No questions.
You do?
No.
Yeah, Arthur?
Nope, I'm good.
Jim? Ready? We're good, Nick. Thank you
Well,
very
thank
much.
for having me. It was a pleasure working with you, and I always like to give a commendation to just the staff here. They do a great job. They're great to work with, and really appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys, so.
One of the things with numbers, and I've done this for years, I mean, the more numbers you talk about, the more glossy-eyed people become, because it's like, it'll almost put you to sleep. It's like, what'd you say?
Yeah.
You know, type of a thing. So I appreciate the abbreviated portion of it, but I actually appreciated the detail on this too. And I think this is good for all of us, especially counselors and new counselors, as we work towards our new budget that we're going to be working with and have here in 4 months when we have our budget workshop. So it's just a little bit more understandable. So anyway, thank you, Nick, very much.
Thank you.
Let's see.
For the finances,
We
everybody
need
left.
to.
I think it's commendable that Nick was able to keep the Boy Scouts here enthralled for the entire time of his presentation.
Well, I guess
It was the end of the show.
we do have an action that we need to take
Oh,
with acceptance of
that was,
this.
I find it.
Your Honor, I move that we
you.
accept the City of Moscow audited comprehensive annual financial report for 2017 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Gina and a second by Catherine to accept the City of Moscow audited comprehensive annual financial report for FY 2017 as presented. I will start, any questions before I go on? I'll start the roll with Brandy.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Well, before I say aye, I did want to just note that the report was really interesting, and for all those people that we've had that have questioned the process, I just want them to note that there are several pages within the beginning of the packet that just go into copious detail about how everything is done, and so I just appreciated that. Aye.
All right.
Aye.
In other words, folks, we watched the purse strings pretty close.